Hi Padma, hi Swarna, hi Krishan, hi, good evening. Let's
Hi, ma'am.
meet. Hi.
Lyman, I think you can start the initial part of it because
Yeah,
it's
right. So we are about 38, 39 of us. Meanwhile, let the people keep coming in, and some of them are also viewing us live on Facebook. So yeah. Thank you for joining, everyone. Welcome to this masterclass on storytelling as an effective tool in facilitation. Sanjana, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So if you are regular to these master classes, you may be aware that these master classes are organized by Trainer Tribe, which is an online learning community and also an initiative of Quest Alliance. If you would want to share about this master class in your social media handles, please feel free to use hashtag Trainer Tribe, this being our official hashtag. Yeah, we can go next. So I'm very excited actually to announce that so Trainer Tribe is expanding its presence on different social media handles. So we have recently launched our Trainer Tribe handle on Instagram. So if you are a very vivid user of Instagram, please follow us there. And in the upcoming months, we are also planning to expand it to LinkedIn and to Twitter. So please, stay tuned for that. So just requesting everyone to actually please keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, of course. This is just so that we do not get distracted by any background noise. Yeah. But in the meanwhile, please feel free to use the chat section. You can use it at any point of time to leave all your comments, questions, opinions, thoughts. Yeah. So a little bit about Quest Alliance, in case if you're here for the first time. Quest Alliance is non-profit organization. We foster 21st century skills among young people by transforming learning ecosystems across the school to work continuum. And Quest learner focused programs are designed to meet the key gaps in the school to work continuum by using educational technology, capacity building. Sanjana, we are still in the next slide. Yeah, no worries. So here, just a moment to thank all our donors and partners for their continuous support, for actually spreading the word and for getting you folks around here. Go to the next slide, Sanjana. So actually coming to the most awaited part of the day, we have Aman with us today, who is an extremely excellent storyteller, facilitator, and partner at OD Alternatives, and most importantly, TEDx speaker. So we are actually very excited and very happy to have Aman today with us. So Aman, thank you for spending a Friday evening with us and being here today. We are really excited and looking forward. Yeah, over to you.
So when you say over to me, I'm guessing you mean me, Simon.
Yes. I'm
right.
requesting everyone to please keep yourself on mute so that we can have a engaging session throughout without any background disturbance. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. All those wonderful people who I know are here but cannot see. You've heard the joke. Some of you may have heard the joke about, online meetings being like seances. When you're trying to contact the spirits, and you're saying, "Hello, are you there? Hello, are you there?" So, uh, Zoom can actually sometimes be like that, where you're talking to people, but you're not really sure whether they're there, because all you see is a gray tile or a black tile, and so you kind of sense that people are there. All right, you're all there. Okay, Murtaza, thank you for confirming that. Uh, I'd like to keep this as two-way as possible. Because then I know that, okay, you guys are there and you're getting something out of it or not. So it's it'll be good if we can do that. All right, very quickly, we've not got too much time, and I want to make the most of it. So here's jumping headlong into this. First up, let me just begin with a quick story. Okay, I want to, because this is about storytelling, I want to begin with the story about how I got into storytelling. So this actually goes back a few years. In Pune here, there's this bar called Mahabaleshwar. It's called Hotel Mahabaleshwar Restaurant and Bar. And it was a place that my friends and I, we used to frequent quite often. After work, we would go there and we would do our Old Monk rum and seafood out there. Good place, cheap booze, good food. And we're just sitting there talking. And there's this friend of mine, Vaishali, and she said something, and I replied to what she said, and I kind of said, "Oh, you know what? This reminds me of blah blah blah." And Vaishali's retort to me was, "How is it that whenever I say something or anyone else says something, you have some story or the other related to that?" So obviously she didn't mean that as a compliment, and I didn't take it as a compliment either. I looked at her. I said, "Okay." I seem to have a story related to that. I don't know where it comes out from, but I get your point. So this happened. Another maybe year after that, I'm actually at a workshop that is being facilitated by a friend of mine. His name is Satyan. And Satyan, during the workshop, he's got all of us standing in a circle, and he's asking us to do a round of experience sharing. So we all do experience sharing. My turn comes. I do a round of experience sharing also. Satyan stops and says, uh, he looks at everybody else and he says, "Aman is a very interesting storyteller, isn't he?" And that was the first time that I actually heard myself being described as a storyteller. I'd not really heard that term for myself before. And that kind of got me interested, in this whole concept of storytelling. And I started to dig into it a little bit. I started to read about storytelling. I attended a half-day workshop run by a gentleman called Joseph. He ran a half-day workshop on storytelling in the world of business, and I started slowly working elements of storytelling into my workshops. I was doing a workshop on presenting skills. A customer had asked for a workshop on presenting skills and said, "Can you give them advanced tools of presenting?" So I said, "Okay, what can I do? Let me introduce storytelling as an element in there." So it started off there. That workshop went well. They quite liked it. And that storytelling as a tool of presenting grew into a full-fledged workshop on storytelling. So I started offering a 1 day and then a 2-day workshop on storytelling, and then eventually what happened is people took note, and I started to get invited to various places to talk about how can storytelling be used in the world of business. So that's the story of how I got here. It was an accident, but it was a happy accident that actually led me here. So, Somveer, I see a hand that is up. Is there a question that you have? Somveer, are you there? Okay, we'll wait for him when he comes back. All right, so here's a question for everyone. You've just heard me tell a story. I just want to hear from you. And you can unmute yourself and share, or you can use the chat box, whichever your preference is. But what I'd like to hear from you is, when you were hearing me tell the story, what did you notice happening to you? While I was telling the story and you were listening, what did you notice about yourself? Can you talk about that?
I was curious to hear the end part of the story.
Lakshmi, thanks. You were curious to hear what happens next.
Yes.
Right? Thank you. Shaina said she started to visualize. Sapna said she started smiling. Ashish was reminded about the time where he was telling stories. Anybody else wants to speak or type? Share what was happening with you? Okay, so here's based on the responses that I've heard from Lakshmi and from Kura, Shaina, and others. Is it safe for me to say that when I was telling the story and you were waiting for what was happening next, or imagining about what you were doing and visualizing, would it safe for me to say that, you know, your brain was engaged during that time? Give me a thumbs up if that's what was happening with you. Okay, so this is the first insight I want to leave you with, people. Today, the thing with storytelling is, as you have seen for yourself, is when somebody is telling a story, what happens to the listener is a couple of things. One is the listener becomes engaged and says, okay, I want to know what happens next, right? So they're tuned in. They may start thinking or, you know, correlating back from what you're saying to what has happened in their own life. So that whole phase of reflective observation that we call, that starts taking place, you know, and people may start visualizing, etc. The stories seem to have a great impact on our brains. And, you know, as we go ahead, I'm going to share with you what really happens in the brain when storytelling actually is going on. So just remember this: storytelling, what has just happened with you when you start using stories, whether it's in a bar setting, or it's in a work setting, or it's in a classroom setting, there's a big chance that the people who are listening to you tell a story will experience similar things. They will be engaged, curious, interested, visualizing, connecting, all of those things they will be doing. So that's good reason for you to use storytelling, I'm assuming, right? Let's just do a quick test. If you think this is good reason to use storytelling, give us a thumbs up or something. Okay, good. I can see a few. That's great. Okay. And let me also tell you what I've just done. So, you know, we don't have time. We've not done a formal introduction. Layman mentioned my name and said, okay, this is what I do. And when you want to introduce yourself, one way is obviously to do the formal introduction. The other way is actually you can use a story from your life that talks about who you are, what you do, and actually you can turn the very introduction into a story, which is what I've done. So the next time you're in a classroom with participants, children, whatever, teachers, you know, here's something you can try. You can actually pick a story that talks about how you got into teaching, training, whatever, and actually you can tell that story, and that can become your introduction to not, it actually gives you people a lot of information. It actually not only tells people your name and what you do, but it can also tell you more. For example, when you heard me tell the story, uh, if I can just unmute yourself and give me a few answers, if you will. You heard me tell the story about myself. What did you learn about me?
Yeah, if I may, I joined halfway. So what I did learn was that the path that you're on, your career, was a very happy accident.
Sure. You learned that I came about this by accident. Okay.
The fact that you
Yeah,
did not realize you were such a great storyteller before someone actually told you. So, friends sometimes can make you realize many things.
Good point, Murtaza. Your friends and family, at least the good members amongst your friends and family, can make you aware of what your talents might be. So yes, I wasn't aware. Thanks. Lakshmi, you were saying something.
you are a good storyteller, and your observation is really good, and your memory is also very good. You keep recollecting things, and you connect with the incident which is happening in the present.
Sure, sure. Thanks. So you learned that. And some people may have learned that I'm fond of rum and seafood. Yeah. Anybody notice that? Yeah. Right. So, whenever you tell a story about yourself, what will happen is obviously people will pick up your name and what you do, but they'll also pick up how you started doing. What's the history of your profession, how you got into it. Maybe they'll pick up your passion for it. They'll understand why you do. They may pick up some other details about what kind of person you are, and that'll serve as a nice introduction, not only to who you are, but to who you are, what you do, and other things, right? So yeah, try that next time. Naina, thank you so much. And Sapna, you did catch the seafood bit. Thank you. Okay, going forward, here's a little poll. So a quick poll for all of us, and I'm going to request our good friend Lemon to just try that out if you can. Yeah, there it is. So if you could respond to this poll, please. About half of us have voted for this poll. The other half who have not voted yet, if you can, because in the next about 50 seconds this poll will close. Okay, I guess we can close the poll now. And If you can just close it and broadcast the results for all of us to see. Yeah. Thank you so much. So good. Nice. About 74% or 34 out of the people who voted have said, I do currently use storytelling in my facilitation, and about, 26% or 12 of you have said that no, not yet. So great. For those who don't currently do it, hopefully you will soon. And for those who currently do, if you could type in the chat box, what kind of stories do you currently use in your work? Can you give me a few examples? So stories related to our past experiences, stories related to the topic. Lakshmi, tell me more. Give me an example of topic related stories in the chat box, please. Stories of real people. Aruna, thank you. Stories of change. Deepthi, thank you. Sashi is saying fictional stories. Can you also, Sashi, give me context? So, where would you, for example, use a fictional story? And stories of animals or children. Okay. Serial telling of tales. Aruna, tell me a little more about that, please. Okay.
Aman, may I tell you a little more about serial telling of stories?
Sure,
This is
sure,
Aruna
Aruna.
here.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so I do this in my life skill classes for maybe around grades 4 to 6. So
Okay.
I give them a starting sentence and divide them into groups, and they have to pass on, and each student builds on the story, and the last person has to end the story. So
Sure.
and then we compare notes between groups, how they have made different stories or how they are similar.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Aruna. So you're using storytelling as a tool of, creating participation. You've turned storytelling into a group activity. That's kind of what you've done, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thanks. Ashish, I'm also keen to hear about this Reflect the Journey through the program. What's this about?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was part of this fellowship program that I ran for like 6 months. It was with an NGO in Delhi, based in Delhi called Prava. And we ran the whole fellowship program. And at the end, like when we were concluding the whole fellowship, I tried to submit all it up in a story, and I named it the River of Life, where a river, like a fountain, is coming from the mountain top, and it reaches the villages like downhill, and how it like concludes, like how it goes, like how it screams down there. So I was trying to conclude I was trying to have like check dams, like checks and balances, like where they stopped and actually reflected to the previous journey that they had. So I was trying to.
Sure, great. So that's really interesting, all of that, people. Thank you so much. So as you can see, among those of you who have been using storytelling, you've been using it for a variety of purposes. Can you turn storytelling into an end of workshop, journey kind of a thing, saying, okay, let's talk about where we started, let's talk about where we went, and then next. So, so that's one way of using storytelling in workshops. Aruna talked about how she turns it into a group activity, which is like a one-line story, everybody adds to it. And then, of course, you're doing storytelling with children, which could be around animals or children or fictional stories, or you could actually be talking about historical figures. You want to send a message to them about whether it is food or waste management or whatever, and you actually tell real stories about that from of things that have happened to people or things that have happened to us. So that is absolutely wonderful. Those are exactly the ways storytelling is meant to be used. So very quickly now, here's what I'm hoping to do with us today. We're going to talk about these 3 points. First is recognize the impact of stories on the brain. We've already kind of done that piece. A list of stories that we can use in training, which is what we are moving to now. And finally, we'll also talk about, if this is of interest to some of you, how can I create my own story bank? How can I have a bunch of stories ready for myself to use? This is broadly what we'll cover today. I want to go back to the impact on the brain bit for just, some of you may be quite interested in, these aspects of storytelling. So what we are going to do is have a quick look at a couple of slides around this. So there's a bunch of things that actually goes on inside the brain of a listener when they're listening to a story. There are different parts of the brain that actually process language. There are different parts of the brain that process visuals. And when you're actually telling a story, which actually has a lot of visual elements, which actually has language elements, which actually has timeline elements, different parts of the brain, multiple parts of the brain actually start lighting up. So when, for example, let's say I'm telling you a story about Mahabaleshwar, the restaurant and bar. I'll say it's right right next to a very busy street. It's there's a very busy signal, and right after the busy signal is this entrance. You got car parks out there, and as you walk in, there's a lot of greenery on both sides. You got bougainvillea flowers on one side, and you got steps to go down to the bar, etc., etc. So what's happening is, because this kind of a description is going on, the visual part of the listener's brain, and this some of you are probably very visual, and you may actually start visualizing. So that part lights up. The moment somebody's brain is lit up, it means they are engaged, or at least that part of the brain is engaged. So you're doing language, plus you're doing visual, plus you're doing timeline, and a whole lot of things. The other interesting thing is that when the brains of the storyteller and the brains of the listener of the story have actually been mapped, in some studies, and they find that similar areas tend to light up. So while I'm telling you a story, I may have 2 or 3 parts of mind that are active, and when we actually do an fMRI scan of your brain, you'll find that the exact same parts seem to be firing together. This is called neural coupling, which means that there is this connection that seems to be established between the the brain of the storyteller and the brain of the listener, and 2 brains are mapping very close to each other. If the story is about an experience that let's say I have gone through myself, if it involves a certain struggle or an emotion, it gives the listener an opportunity to vicariously live through that experience and feel that emotion. And what does that do then? What it does is that it fires up a few neurotransmitters These are neurotransmitters that you may have heard about. So the neurotransmitters that get fired up, there are three of them. There's dopamine, there's cortisol, and there's oxytocin. So dopamine is the addiction neurotransmitter. It's the one that actually seeks pleasure. It's the one that is released when there is reward. So when you're anticipating what's happening next, that's when dopamine is going off. So when you're telling stories like some of you experienced, there is the sense of, I want to know what happened next. And you got dopamine, you created that dopamine effect in the other party's brain, in the listener's brain. And like I said, dopamine is the neurotransmitter of addiction. So if you want somebody to stay addicted to what you're saying, to your message, storytelling is a great tool, because you've been able to do that. Cortisol, whenever there is stress, cortisol is released. And if you're telling a story where there's been a struggle, where there's been a difficulty, when there's been something like that, a conflict, you can actually find that cortisol levels are higher in the listeners' brains as well, and that actually helps them pay attention, and it helps them remember. So if you can do that kind of storytelling, which actually heightens a sense of struggle and conflict and fight, you can actually help your listeners retain the message a lot more effectively than, as for example, you just give them the facts. So one of the reasons why history is as subject, I really think the way we were taught history when I was in school was terrible, because history, you've got so much potential for turning everything into a story. But instead, the way we were taught is, okay, Battle of Panipat happened at Panipat, Haryana, in the year 1782 or whatever year it happened. Yeah, I don't remember. But if somebody bothered to turn it into a story about who the characters were and what the build-up was, I may actually have retained all that information to today. And that's the difference between facts and story. And then finally, oxytocin is the third hormone. Oxytocin is the hormone of bonding, of relationships, of healing, of calmness, all of that stuff. And when again you're telling stories which are about you or the character having gone through a certain struggle, what happens in the listener's brain is that you identify with that and you're saying, okay, poor guy, I feel so sorry for him. I wish there was something to do for this character. And what's happening at that time is that oxytocin is beginning to get released. You're able to empathize with that character, and obviously the kind of relationship you form with either the storyteller or the character in the story is then strengthened. So if you want people to have a stronger relationship with the character, or even with you as the facilitator, then storytelling is a great tool to use. Right. So here, these are the three neurotransmitters that storytelling can help give rise to in the brains of the listeners. Right. So, okay. Now, the other thing that I was saying is, let's also talk about the kind of stories that that can possibly be used in facilitation, teaching, training, etc. So there's a big variety there. Some of you are already doing a lot of it. So in my work, let me tell you where I may use it. If I'm doing a workshop around customer centricity, then I will probably tell stories around customer centricity. If I'm doing a workshop around conflict resolution or emotional intelligence, or around how do you behave as a leader, how do you retain employees, how do you do decision making. Then I will pull out a story related to any of these things. So let me try and give another quick demo for that. And I'm going to ask you to maybe make a choice. So I've given you a few topics. It could be around leadership, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, customer centricity, employee retention, decision making, or it could also be about sales and negotiation. That's a seventh choice. So which story would you like me to tell? Okay. So I'm hearing conflict resolution, employee retention, leadership, conflict, employee retention, leadership, emotional. Wow. So those are the three themes that are coming up: emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, leadership, and the fourth one was employee retention. So let me, in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend employee retention and leadership into one story and tell you that. That will hopefully take care of two things. So this goes back to the time when I used to be a team leader in the BPO business. I was possibly 26 years old. The year must have been 2002, late 2002. I'm assuming, yeah. And so yeah, I mean, some of you can calculate my age if you want to. Yeah, 2002, 26 years old, team leader. And what happened was the BPO sector was really competitive. Okay, it was a sector that would, it would have people who would come in and join, and then there was another BPO that could actually pick them up very quickly for, by just offering a few thousands more. Money was available, and jobs were available, and therefore there was a significant amount of attrition in that line. And so what happened was, one evening I'm actually standing outside on my break, and one of my team members, he actually comes up to me and he says, Aman, I actually I don't know if I'll be here for very long. So I said, Acha, why, what's happened? So he said, I've been in the BPO industry for very long. I haven't grown. I'm still at the bottom level. I would like to, become a team leader, but nothing seems to be happening. Everybody was in a hurry at that time, right? It was a new business. People would get promoted quickly, and everybody wanted to grow fast. So did he. He came up to me and said, so I'm not growing, and I actually have an interview at at this big call center. They are looking for people quite desperately. Money is quite good. So I'm going there for an interview, and if I get through, I'll probably leave. I just, wanted to tell you. So what I did at that time was, I said, okay. I said, look, what do you want? What do you actually want? And he said that I want to do well. I said, what does doing well mean to you? In this business. He said, I would like to get promoted. How long will I do the same job? I want to move to the next level. So I said, okay, if that's what you want, you've already spent 6 months here. You are, you are another 12 months away from qualifying for the next, for qualifying for the next role. Once you spend 18 months here, you will be eligible to apply for the next opening for team leader that opens up. And at that time, you should by all means go for it and see if you can make it to team leader. However, if you quit right now, you go to another organization, you will definitely make more money, but you will probably be starting again from the bottom. And they may have an 18-month policy, or they may actually have a 24-month policy. I don't know about that, but you will have to start your meter from zero again, and you'll have to wait for that period. So I told him, look, I'm on your side, right? And if you think that going is the best thing for you, if the right decision for you, by all means go. If you get the job, take it up if money is important to you. But if money is not the important thing to you, if growth is the important thing to you, then I would recommend hang around here. It'll mean you'll earn less money, but you will actually be able to possibly give yourself a chance of growing faster. So I said that to him. He went for the interview. He got through the interview with an experienced kid, but he didn't take it up. Actually, two people had the exact same conversation with him. And I told them the exact same thing. Both of them went for the interview. Both of them did not take up the offer. They hung around. They actually stayed back. In the long term, both of them also, managed to, apply for internal job postings and get promoted. Also, one person took about 12 months, another person took about another 18 months, but they eventually got where their ambition was. So that is a story I tend to share whenever somebody's got a question around employee retention or leadership. So I'm going to pause now. I'm just going to check with you. What did you notice when you in that story? Can you just share?
Sorry, sir. Can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, Naina. I was saying, what did you notice in that story? What caught your attention? Yeah, Mary, go for it.
When I was listening to the story, I understand that as a leader, you were able to understand the aspiration of the person in your team, and at the same time, like appreciating the person, and also the need of the person. We were able to address the need of the person, and at the same time, like the person was wavering, like that whether to go for a higher high career salary, how to go for promotion. And there also you touch the value system of the person. The person wants to be somebody, wants to grow in that aspect. So when the clear understanding of his position, because he was not clear, so you made the things very clear to him. But at the same time, you gave him the space to express his opinion, also space to have his own decision. So I think that would have helped the person, like not this person is not keeping me, like telling something to keep me here, but instead giving me a lot of options, the opportunities. Go, you will have this. Go, or you remain here, you will have this. So then, but in spite of that, they also experimented the interview. And then, but anyway, they won't have that. So that's what I understood. A leader has to be a person who's interested in the team, and at the same time, give them the exploration, the possibility of exploring, but at the same time, like how to retain, even in the own space, what are the other opportunities that are here, though there is something which is not there according to their interest, but something is here for which they can look forward for their career. That's it, my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks also, Aruna, Raghavendra, and Lakshmi and Naina. So what you've been able to spot is, okay, there are a few things that took place in the story. There was a certain amount of patience that was demonstrated. There was the presence, you're noticing that there was an attempt to understand the other party's aspirations and to kind of support them, give them a choice, all of that stuff, right? And what I would do is I would use this story and I would just check with people, okay, what did you hear? What do you think, why do you think they stayed back? What do you think helped them stay back? And then they'll obviously give you their points of view. And a lot of these things will be similar to what you're noticing, that, okay, if people feel, I mean, you want to be a good leader, you want to retain your people, here are a few things that you must do. One is you must have the kind of rapport or connection with them that they feel comfortable coming and telling you that I'm going for an interview. If you don't have that kind of friendship with your people, they're never going to tell you, they're just going to quit. So one is that. Two is when they come and tell you, don't tell them, "Arey, you're going to quit, you're going to leave me," all of that stuff. You got to ask them, okay, by good, I'm on your side. So your people should never see you as a boss. They should see you as their well-wisher. So they're going to come up to you and say, hey, you know what? I want some career guidance. I have a job offer. Should I take it? If they will ask you that, you're in a position to guide them, retain them. And I could do that because truly I was I was my people's well-wisher. I wanted them to do well. I wasn't a representative of my organization. So these are some ways that I would use this story to help people see leadership differently. I would help people take a different approach to employee engagement. So that would be one example. And you can do the same thing. You can tell a story about how a conflict was resolved. You can tell a story around how a customer was, retained, or how a customer was given very good service. You can tell a story about how a deal was closed, or how negotiation was done. And in that tale, there will be elements that people will notice, and you can actually help them therefore. Because ultimately, what is a story? At least and I'm not talking about fictional stories right now, I'm talking about real lived stories. What is a real lived story? A real lived story is basically an example of a skill being demonstrated. Right? Or, I mean, if it's a success story, if it's a failure story, then it's an example of what not to do. So when you tell a story, it can either be an example of don't do this, it's a problem, or it can be an example of here's how you do this. And people are actually going to look at that story and look at that evidence of how you did something or how somebody else did something, and they're going to take away, okay, next time I have to do something like this as a leader, as a salesman, as a customer service rep, as whatever, I'm going to try this. I mean, yeah, so you can do this for parenting, you can do this for teaching, you can do this for whatever else. Right. And ideally, I would have loved to pause and hear more from you, but I'm very conscious of the time. We got about 9 minutes to go. So with your permission, I'm going to rattle on for for maybe 4 or 5 minutes more, and then I'm going to pause and take questions at that time. So one last thing that I want to tell you is another application of storytelling is, and this is something that I think Ashish was talking about, but I'll talk about it a little more. On your screen, you see something which is a Japanese import. So in a lot of people who've actually studied the structure of storytelling talk about this curve that you're seeing, right? I mean, there's a flat and an escalation and then coming down and then another flat thing that happens out there. So most storytelling structures follow this kind of a thing. The Japanese call it Kisho Tenketsu. And the key, as you can see on your screen, it actually talks about the introduction, show its development, the twist is the ten, and the conclusion is the ketsu. Let me tell you how this can work. in any story that you're telling, the structure you will notice. So for example, when I was telling the story about, Mahabaleshwar, for example, there was the introduction where I introduced the scene, the place, the situation, and the characters. Saying there was me, there was my friends, there was Vaishali. And what happened was that we were talking, she said something, that was the development. Then there was another development that took place after that. I was in a workshop, Satya and my friend said something, there was a twist. He actually made me see what I used to see as something that people didn't like. I actually saw that it was something that Satya appreciated. And that's what woke me up to the fact that, okay, it seems like this is a useful thing. And then I did different things, etc., etc. So in every story, you will find that there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's a series of incidents that leads to a different outcome, and then finally, a new story is established at that time. The other way you can use this, and this is what I saw, one gentleman, he's a facilitator from Belgium, a guy called Francis, who actually introduced me to this structure. And the way he uses it is he uses this as the overall session design. So if you're doing, let's say, a workshop which is 1 day long, or 2 days long, whatever, he actually says, okay, there's an introduction phase. During the introduction phase, I introduce myself, and the participants introduce themselves, and I introduce the purpose, and I introduce all of that stuff. So we just get an idea about who we are and why we are there. And then what we do is we do a series of activities. So this development of the show is basically a series of activities that takes place: activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, activity 4. And from those activities, there seems to be a twist. The twist, he says, is the learning people are taking away from the activity. And so, for example, you can do a storytelling exercise, and you can do a debrief of it. And during the debrief, people say, this is what I'm taking away. And that's your, 10. And then right at the end of the workshop, you invite everyone together and say, okay, let's all pool together our collective learnings. And there's that collage making or hand raising or everything. And everybody shares what their learnings are. And then you decide to wrap up the workshop, which is the conclusion or the ketsu. So he uses this as an overarching theme for workshop design. Very interestingly, every single activity he runs is also designed, in this format. So he uses Kisho Tenketsu. Whenever he's running an activity, he will introduce the activity. Then he'll have round 1 of the activity, round 2 of the activity, round 3 of the activity. Then he'll have a small chat about it. And during the chat, there will be insight collection. And then finally, the conclusion will be the final debrief and collecting everyone's insights, saying, okay, what did we learn from this activity? So that is one more way that the storytelling, not the art of storytelling or not the act of storytelling, but the structure of storytelling is actually applied to learning design. And I thought that was very interesting. So I thought, let me just share that with you. It will take some time for all of us to actually apply this in our work, and I'd be very happy to talk to you about it in detail at another opportunity. But this is something that I also wanted to let you know. Finally, some people have a question around, okay, where do you get stories from? Right? I mean, I'm sometimes asked, okay, how do you get all these stories? So do any of you also have that question? How do I develop a story bank? Where do I get stories from? If that's a question, just give me a thumbs up so I know this is interesting for you. Hani, Rushali, all of you are saying yes. Okay, good. Very glad. So here's one thing that has served me very well. And again, I'll tell you this through a story because I'm excited now. So when I was young, one of the things that I liked to do was I just liked to talk to my friends. That was my only interest. I didn't like studying. I didn't have a sport. I didn't have a hobby. You know, I was below average at sports. I was below average at studies. The because the only thing that I liked to do was hang around with friends. And my uncle once asked me, I was in college. He said, "What do you do with with friends?" And I said, "I just talk to them." And he got irritated. He said, "What is talking? Kuch acha karo." And but to me, talking was the best thing in the world. And I think that is what has helped me, because I've always been interested in talking to people about their lives and about what has happened to them. And in every conversation, there is a potential incident, anecdote, story. I mean, there are 62 people on this call right now. If I had all day, imagine if I asked all of you to tell me one story from your life. Just one story. One story from school, one story from college, one story from work, one story of promotion, one story of failure, one story of success, one story of parenting, one story of... I could have 62 into 10. I could have 620 stories potentially. And all of them would be linked to some thing or the other. There could be stories around emotional intelligence, emotional control, anger control. There could be stories around bonding and relationships and victory and defeat and God knows, all kinds of things, right? So human experience is extremely rich. And if you can become interested in other human beings, if you can start giving time to other human beings and listening to what happened to them at work in their lives, you're going to have a story bank that is incredible. And your own life, I mean, forget about everybody else. Most of the stories I tell are from my own life. And I've told 3 stories today, and you noticed each of those stories are from my own life. I've not needed to look at another person's life yet. Do I need to sometimes? Yes, I do, because obviously I don't have all the experiences happening to me. And sometimes I borrow based on what I've heard other people say. But our lives, if we choose to pay attention, our lives and the lives of others are very rich sources of true, authentic stories. So now you want to go about this in a very methodical way. One of the things that my friend does is he maintains an Excel sheet, and anything that happens to him on a daily basis, which he thinks can be a potential story related to something, he puts in that Excel sheet. He says, today this happened to me. I went to the doctor, this happened. I realized blah, blah, blah. Next column he writes, this story can be used for blah, blah, blah. Resilience or cat, dog, buffalo, whatever it is. Then something happens to him at work the next day. He goes to the Excel sheet, puts it, writes what it's about. Is it about leadership? Is it about patience? Is it about cat, dog, buffalo, whatever? And so therefore he's been building this Excel-based story bank, and that's how he does it. So if you're looking for stories, you got all around you. They're wonderful resources. You don't even need to go to a book around stories. Your lives and others' lives are great resources, and you can just use either an Excel sheet or a notepad or something like that, a Word pad, Word document, and just write down all these stories out there. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on where you can actually get a story bank built and how you can build your own story bank. I'm going to quickly answer some of the questions that I see in chat. So Honey is saying, do stories need to be real or can they be fictional? Honey, my answer to that is it depends on why you're using storytelling. If your intent is to use storytelling to entertain, they can be fictional. But if you want to use stories to teach, my personal preference is to use real stories. I'll tell you why. As a participant in a workshop, if my facilitator gives me a story that is untrue, my first reaction is, this has not actually happened, so you cannot say ki aisa hota hai. Right? I mean, I don't inhabit the realm of the imagined, etc. So for me as a participant, it's extremely hard to take a metaphorical story and believe that it can actually lead to anything. So And I'm suspecting that there are other participants like me. So when I'm trying to use stories for teaching, for facilitation, I happen to people. But if you're meaning to entertain, by all means, tell fictional stories. Great. What else? Rushali. Rushali, you've typed a question to me directly. I need your permission. Is it okay? Can I read? Can I reply in a public forum, or do you want a separate answer? You'll have to speak up, Rushali, because I won't know.
Yeah, man, you can answer it publicly.
Okay, super. So Rushali's question to me was, what if we don't remember stories from our life, like it nothing major happened? Rushali, we'll need to get into another session around that. My belief is that many of us say, okay, tell me this, and this question is not just for Rushali, for everyone. So Rushali, when you meet old college friends, what happens? When a little reunion happens, you're at lunch, dinner, whatever. What is the conversation about?
It's about the classes, the events.
Classes, events, bunkings, films, crushes, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
What are those?
Those are the memories.
Right. Are there potential stories as well?
Yes, definitely.
Right. Yeah. So all the things that have happened to us are potential stories. And I think the issue is we don't recognize them as stories. We don't recognize that all the things, every incident of bunking, every time you failed a class or a subject, every time you had to take a supplementary exam, all of those are potential anecdotes. And I want us to start noticing that there's potential in all of that stuff. Does that answer your question, Rushali?
Definitely, Aman. Like personally for me, when I'm here in this workshop because I want to expand my LinkedIn page through content creation. Whenever I start, I want to start typing about something, I have to remember, okay, like if it is in relation to, for example, time management, what all instances I have done for the time management. So in such cases, sometimes it happens you don't have a real story for yourself. You have to think hard. You have to think of either you go to Google, you write down the facts, and then this is happening. What is exactly what you do?
Yeah, I think you're right. You may not have a personal story for everything, and if you're looking for a success story, you may not have a success story for everything. You could potentially have a failure story for it. So, for example, if you ask me about time management, I have a lot of failure stories on that count, and I can definitely tell stories around what not to do in time management. But also I can rely on what my friends do, and I can actually mine their stories and start telling those if needed.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. Honey, to answer your question, how does storytelling work for introverts who don't like to open up easily, especially about their personal life? Honey, quick answer to that is my sister. She's a writer. She's actually an award-winning writer. She's won multiple awards, which are local, national, and international. She's a hardcore introvert, doesn't like spending time with people, including me. But she tells stories. Now, the medium is different. She may not like to communicate those stories in a large setting. She chooses to write instead. If your question is specific to, okay, can you practice oral storytelling in a group? That I think is it's a longer conversation. We may not have time for that, but feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to engage. I'm on LinkedIn. I'll also give you an email address that you can reach out to. So reach out and I'll be happy to talk more about how that can be done.
Thank you so much for responding. It's just come from because I'm in such kind of profession that it is, I think, a very useful skill for me. But I just usually, I'm a conserved kind of person. So that is why I access. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Yeah. So as we're kind of towards the end, so if somebody has, I can be here for another 2 minutes for sure. So if somebody has an urgent question that they feel they really needed an answer to and they've not got, let's use those 2 minutes. Do ask that question and I'll be happy to see if I
want
can
to ask you a question.
Yeah,
हेलो
Naila.
एक्चुअली मैं हिंदी में बात करूंगी.
क्यों नहीं?
ओके हम स्लम एरिया में काम करते हैं और मतलब मेरा क्वेश्चन ऐसा है कि बहुत टाइम ऐसे हो जाता है कि हम बच्चों को स्टोरी बता रहे हैं लेकिन वो स्टोरीज अलग मतलब कल्चर की होती है और मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि हम ऐसे कौन सी स्टोरीज बताए या ऐसे कैसे स्टोरीज को बच्चों को बताए कि वो स्टोरीज उनसे रिलेटेड हो, बच्चों को उनके जैसे लगे और वो समझ के ले कि नहीं ये हमारे जैसे ही है. क्योंकि स्लम एरिया में बहुत टाइम ऐसे होता है कि उनके प्रॉब्लम्स हमारे प्रॉब्लम से अलग होते हैं. इवन जो चिल्ड्रंस होते हैं उनके भी प्रॉब्लम्स हमारे प्रॉब्लम से अलग होते हैं और हमें टीचर्स को भी समझ में नहीं आता कि अरे ये बात तो इनको समझानी है लेकिन कैसे समझाए, क्योंकि हमारा माइंडसेट और उनका माइंडसेट अलग होता है. तो ऐसे टाइम पे हमें स्टोरी तो बतानी है लेकिन वो कैसे वे से बताए और कौन सी स्टोरीज हम उनको सुना सकते हैं.
नैना, ये बच्चे कितने बड़े हैं उस पर डिपेंड करता है. मान लीजिए अगर छोटे बच्चे हैं तो आप उनको स्टोरीज सुना सकती हैं जो आपने बनाई हैं, या तो रियल स्टोरी हो सकती है जो कि आपने किसी और बच्चे के बारे में सुनी है जो आप उससे आकर बता सकते हैं, या आप एक कंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकती हैं स्टोरी बच्चों के लिए जिसमें कोई मॉरल वैल्यू हो, जैसे ईसॉप्स फेबल्स हो या पंचतंत्र हो या जातक कथाएं हो. It can be a story about a teddy bear, an animal, etc. But obviously the intention of the story, I'm assuming, is not to entertain; it is to teach. So you can actually ensure कि वो story जो है उसमें कोई message हो, and वो फिर उसके बाद story किसी भी चीज के बारे में हो, चाहे वो भालू के बारे में हो या वो टॉय के बारे में हो, वो चल जाता है. उसके बाद आप क्या कर सकती हैं कि एक बार आपने वो स्टोरी सुनाई है, आप उनसे पूछ सकती हैं कि आपके साथ ऐसा कुछ हुआ है क्या, एंड देन जनरली सी सम ऑफ देम, शायद वो लोग आपको, शायद अगर डिपेंड करता है कि बच्चों की उम्र क्या है. अगर बहुत छोटे हैं तो उनका एक्सपीरियंस इतना नहीं होगा कि वो रिलेट कर पाए, ना ही उनकी लैंग्वेज एबिलिटी इतनी डेवलप हुई होगी. पर अगर थोड़े बड़े हैं, मान लीजिए अगर वो 9-10 साल के ऊपर के हैं, तो शायद वो आपको अपना पर्सपेक्टिव भी उसके ऊपर दे पाएंगे. सो आप ऐसा ट्राई कर सकती हैं. Does this make sense?
Thank you, sir.
No problem at all. No problem. All right, I gotta run. I have another call starting in about 4 minutes. So it's been wonderful. I know this was very, very brief. I know, Sapna, you've got a question, but here's what I'm doing, okay? Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me on this email address, right? And what I can do is, if you've got any other curiosities, questions, etc., I would be quite happy to to engage with you and try and provide some answers that will give you something. Here's the LinkedIn profile that you can do also. So reach out, and thanks once more for having me. I wish we could do this longer, but maybe we'll get another opportunity to do this longer. So for now, I guess I'll jump off. Thank you again. Devin?
Yeah, thank you, Aman.
May I?
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you so much. I'll connect with you later.
All right, people. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. So hi everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know Aman has left. So in case if you have any questions and it was not answered to you, please reach out to him on his LinkedIn or on his email. Yeah. And thank you everyone for participating. We will see you again in the next masterclass, and join us on Trainer Tribe. We are on Facebook. Yeah. Thank you everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
weekend. See you next masterclass.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you.